Please rise for the pledge to the flag. Okay, so even though public's here, I suppose nobody's signed up to speak for that. Correspondence, okay. Okay, so for the 2026 budget, the general fund, police.
So you all should have the budget spreadsheet in front of you. We can go through a few, we can go, do you all want to go line item? Okay, thank you. So we'll go through, especially the ones that have notes, or if any questions on any of the line items pop up, please, yes, I'm sorry, it's page 5. Please let me know.
My only ask, Chief, is just if there's like anything that's like a disparity, just
Sure.
short circuit me asking you a question.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, so just the first couple that do have notes. I think Jean put these notes in and she can quickly address the first two, which was the looks like the prior year sick reimbursement. The one time in January, it will be adjusted. I'm assuming that we'll get the numbers in January. So that is somewhat of an educated or a historical guess.
As we get closer to the holiday time, some people will use sick leave, so that number will come down. Obviously, we can only take it up to the time when we have to publish a budget, so it won't be 100% accurate.
The next line I just want to point out is the overtime wages. So with the overtime wages, we do get reimbursed for a large portion of details that we run through the highway safety network, which is all of our DUI checkpoints, DUI roving patrols, seatbelt safety roving patrols, and things to that nature. So although the overtime budget was exceeded on paper, the reimbursements don't go back into that line item. They go into current year revenue. So
this looks really out of whack here. You have these high actual amounts, the 96,000 in 2024, expecting 99,000 2025, but we get a significant amount of reimbursement, and that shows up because it's intergovernmental revenue. We can't credit it back to the same line item if it's received in the same year. It has to go into a revenue line item. So this looks a bit cattywampus, but we've received a significant amount of overtime revenue, 27,000 or so. That's my recollection is around 27,000 for these overtime wages. It's a cooperative program. A number of police departments do it. It's for DUI checkpoints, you do seatbelt checkpoints, child seat checkpoints.
correct.
All of those kind of details, and different departments participate in them.
And those funds are made very clear to us prior to entering into the quarter. So we know exactly how much we are authorized to spend, and we're down to almost the penny at the time with that. So just moving on, looking down the line, the next line item that I wanted to talk about would be the uniform allowance. So the uniform allowance, according to our CBA,
What number is that?
oh, I'm sorry.
4,100, 238. It's in the middle of the page.
So I will say, I'm not quite sure how this slipped past me in the years past. But the uniform allowance that the officers receive according to their contract, believe me, is 740
750 per officer per year.
prior to the current contract being signed, the detectives received 750 and the officers received, I believe, 200.
200 for decades,
Yes.
which was absolutely not enough.
So that was negotiated and increased, and due to that increase, that is the reason why this line item right now has been overspent this year. That is why we're adjusting. I'm asking to adjust that to 48,250. We did a really good job this year with. I shouldn't even say that. I appreciate the board in years past being able to budget the amount that was budgeted, which was consistently 25,000, because we were able to upfit and get uniforms, updated uniforms for almost every officer. So this year we didn't really have to rely on that, which is a good thing because that contractual uniform allowance came out of this line item. So although it was overspent, it wasn't overspent as much as I anticipated it to be. But in order to accommodate next year to be able to pay that and be able to replace uniforms that are damaged or new issued uniforms to the three new hires, I'm asking that line item be adjusted to 48,250. Ammunition and similar supplies, which is right under that uniform directly, 239, 4,100, 239. I just wanted to point out with this line item, we usually have one bulk purchase this year, every year, for ammunition. So if you're looking at and wondering why there's significant amount of money still in that line item, and there's anticipated or estimated to be 19,000 coming out this fourth quarter, it's because I just approved our bulk ammo purchase, and that will be coming up before the end of the year to be paid.
And I just want to make my annual plug for, sometimes there are supply chain issues with ammunition, and boards previously have basically given us permission that if the police become aware of a difficulty in the supply chain, and then all of a sudden what they need becomes available, just go get it. These guns don't work without them.
That's correct. Adding the second therapy dog, I'm suggesting that we essentially double the therapy dog and supplies line item to $15,000. And then, as you'll see with the animal control, that's where we're going to be placing the safety net sanctuary agreement, and that's $1.50 per capita, which will be $23,426.50. That agreement was signed by us today, and I emailed that over, and I'm waiting for them to execute and sign and then send it back to us. So we will be all set for 2026. Just pointing out the next line item, which would be 4,100 under services, 4,100, 241. That's a very important line item, training. I think it's pretty self-explanatory what we use in that line item, just due to everything, increasing in pricing. I'm asking that line item be increased just $5,000 to $35,000 for this coming year. Right under that, 243, supplies to protect persons and property. That's, if you'll notice the notation, that's where we take out our ballistic vests. We do apply for a grant every year. It's not a guaranteed grant every year, but for the last, 20 years, it has opened up and we have applied and received that grant. You can tell it needs to be adjusted because when we attempted to put in for the grant for the ballistic vests for next year, it indicated that we were over the allotted amount for $1,000 per vest. So I had Lieutenant Kerger lower that, if you will. The grant will supply 50% of the cost of a vest, but they cap that. Well, they don't cap it at 1,000, but they make it clear that it could impact your ability to secure a grant in the coming years if it's over $1,000. So
Also known as
captain, right? So they capped it. So our ballistic vests do cost around $1,500. And that's with all the exterior vest carriers as well. But it's necessary equipment for the officers, and they have a 5-year shelf life is what they recommend for ballistic vests. I've pushed mine off since I've gotten here because my vest doesn't experience the elements as a regular officer on the street every day experience. So, and unless Krista gets crazy someday, I'm pretty safe. Contracted services, 4,100, 300, that's 16,000. That includes the crossing guards that we contribute. It also includes towing expenses. If we have to tow a vehicle for evidence purposes or anything that would be upon our request as a result of an investigation or one of our vehicles breaking down, which occurs sometimes. Bob has us tow the vehicle to the dealer, directly to the dealer. And then other times for something that his people can handle, we tow it to the back of the garage and then they end up fixing whatever needs to be fixed. And Murphy Law, that always occurs in the middle of the night. So my guys get to wake Bob up and alert him to it.
One thing I want to say to the board, I don't know if you're aware, we have a cooperative agreement with the school district about the crossing guards. So the school district employs the crossing guards, and then we get an invoice, and that usually comes in late in the year, usually. So that's what that is referring to. The crossing guard is not an employee of Cumru Township, employee of the Governor Mifflin School District, but we contribute, and this is at Newcastle, I believe, across from Governor Mifflin Elementary, Cumru Elementary, excuse me. The chief would have to explain what a tower dump is.
When an investigation occurs historically with cell phones, anytime a crime occurs where we can identify a cell phone was utilized in the crime, what we can request through search warrants is a tower dump. So what we can do is we can actually apply for a search warrant. If the search warrant is granted, we reach out to a cell phone carrier after they're identified, and we request a tower dump, which essentially provides us with anywhere between 150 to 500 pages of just longitude and latitudes numbers for cell phone where your cell phone pinged off of a tower. So from traveling from, for example, tonight, leaving here and traveling to your home, wherever you live, the chances are your cell phone's going to pass and bounce and connect to a few different towers. So what we do is we triangulate that through software, and we can actually map out a route of an individual and where they traveled either before or after they commit a crime. It's extremely expensive though to do that. It's not necessary all the time, but it's expensive. And the reason I point that out, and because it's expensive, as you know, public safety is a losing proposition financially. And we have a very difficult time if we try and select if an investigation is worth the cost, essentially. So we're one of the few, organizations that can't do that. The district attorney's office can put a price tag on that, but we can't, essentially. Now, don't get me wrong, if it's a retail theft of a stick of gum, we're not going to put in for a search warrant for a tower dump, but they're usually big investigations. Okay, the notes that say reimburse DP into the refund line item for 41,320 is incorrect. So that's that money is the money that we pay the emergency services for the software in our MCTs. So that is something that in order for the MCTs to continue to work, we have to pay the Department of Emergency Services, DES, the software, and then the line item right underneath that, 321, is, as you can see, very significant. That's what the county radio dispatching comes from, the bill. That's where that's paid out of, as well as the future MCTs. So as technology advances, every 5, 6, I think it's every 5 years, the DES looks at a countywide contract for replacing those MCTs. And the last round that we went through, we did, one of the reasons it's so advantageous to continue to pay into this is we essentially got a refund check from DES because we had plenty of money in that fund, if you will, for the replacement MCTs. And that's billed every month. Moving on. A lot of this is going to be all self-explanatory. The vehicle equipment maintenance and repair, that line item, Bob really controls that line item. That's obviously, as the title indicates, anytime our vehicles need repair, replacement, or they have issues, that comes out of that line item. What also comes out of that line item is our car washing contract with, I guess is it still Mr.?
Mister.
Yeah, that's what it's called. So that comes out of that as well. So I rely pretty much solely on Bob and his people for that line item, as well as a line item underneath that, which is the tires and chains. That's a predetermined amount based on the number of tires that we need for our vehicles. So those two line items technically are Bob's, and he can be yelled at for those. Computers, so 4100, 500, and 510. Those are, as we've talked about and discussed, and everyone at this table knows for a while, is extremely important in that we have become very technology heavy in law enforcement, and we aren't slowing down, and it's only continuing. So the computer HW is obviously hardware and accessories. So everything computer, hardware, and accessories comes out of that line item. We have workstations that we need to replace to update to Windows 11 in order to run our state systems with JNet, which is the Justice Network, how we check licenses and wants and warrants on individuals. And the workstations, they're approximately 1,300 per workstation, and that's just the tower, and then also the keyboard and the monitor. So we have tried to budget for new workstations to add into the squad room, and we have the mounts, and we're ready to pull the trigger with that. However, that's when we found out that the Windows 11 needed to be updated in the majority of those computers. So that's why we weren't able to add those computers. We're looking to add them next, those workstations. We're looking to add those in 2026. Also, out of this line item is going to be our calibration services. Calibration services, that increases every year as anything else does. And what that is for all of our traffic safety equipment, for monitoring speed. Everything has to be calibrated multiple times a year, and we have to show that in court every time, or any time, I should say, a citation is issued, where we have to testify that they are calibrated properly and they're up to date. That also includes any kind of training that was required on those certain specific devices, whether it's VASCAR or whatnot. So our officers have to be trained in how to depress a stopwatch or flip a switch. So it's the nature of the beast. The software and licensing agreement is exactly what it says. We're, again, technology heavy. We have Cody, which is our operating system. That's going to be we're going to be transitioning over to Pathfinder, which is going to be web-based. We're excited to do that. We've paid to do that, and we're waiting to implement that. And that's going to be more robust and more user friendly. So we're really excited to get that underway. The LPRs are the license plate readers. We also have the ability we signed a software agreement to be able to log on to all of the license plate readers that are fixed mounted throughout the county, we can do that real time, which is actually incredible to hear and listen to. It's something that I date myself, but I still get, it's very impressive when you're listening to the radio and you have officers that are out on the street saying, I just had a LPR hit on a vehicle that is showing a wanted individual traveling south on Lancaster Avenue from Shillington. Shillington has cameras up, Reading has cameras, West Reading has cameras, and they're fixed mounted cameras, Exeter, Spring. So you essentially, if a crime occurs, can track this, track the vehicle if it hits off of these LPR cameras. There's so many cameras that in Cumru, we really don't have a location where it's advantageous for us to put up a camera. So we're just using the software to be able to hit off of all those other cameras.
Yeah, we'll let everybody else pay.
Exactly. It saved Ruth's husband that one year, remember, U-Haul? Ruth's husband got put to the ground at gunpoint, and we were able later to determine that license plate was stolen by somebody else. He wasn't driving a vehicle with he was driving a vehicle with a stolen license plate on it, but he's not the one that did it. So they are really good in investigations. If nobody has any questions for what I've talked about so far, I can move on to the next page. If that's all right.
Maybe just a weird question, but gas and oil, that line.
Yep.
They were going up. What's that going up for? It's not a huge amount, but
that's actually an estimate that, again, I rely on Bob for. They look at that, and it's got to be the best guess estimate based on what the trends are. Correct? Is that how you do it?
And I think what Mr. Greg Miller is talking about is the trend has been going down, but you guys are doing a whole lot of these details as well. So we can certainly adjust
There was
that.
a few more officers, and this summer was brutal, heat wise for 6 weeks. We actually set a record for humidity and heat this summer. And that might be part of it too, because they don't turn those cars off every time they walk away from them.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes when if it's extremely hot, sometimes we have to, well, not sometimes, we have to make sure that we keep those cars running, not only for the computer systems, and the AC, but we also have to be aware of the fact that they can overheat. And if they're really sitting idle for a while, we have to pop the the hood to make sure it cools down, and vice versa if it's cold, to make sure that essentially a lot of it has to do with the computers in the vehicles.
And police cars aren't your normal car. They got cop tires, cop suspension, cop shocks, cop steering wheel. They've got all kinds of enhancements that you wouldn't normally see on a regular, what you would think is an Explorer.
I guess what I'm getting at more is just like, why do we think it's going to go up? Like, are we anticipating on using more gas next year? I wouldn't
Not
expect.
necessarily. I think it would be perfectly legitimate to reduce that. You can see that it was just budgeted the same as 2025. But you're right, the price per gallon has generally been floating down. That's probably the best thing about current household expenses. So if the board would like to set that at a different amount, I think that would be perfectly legitimate.
I mean, it's not overly material at the end of the day, so I'm not going to throw a fit about it, but I'm just curious.
No, we can certainly take that down a few thousand to 55.
I would expect Gene's point, gas prices probably will stay low, if not go lower next year.
Yeah, and that's one of those line items that at the end of the day, you set it and you're with your best guesstimate, and
You'll pay
And
whatever it
if a
takes.
hurricane hits, what I just said is out the door. So
Yeah.
Well, and we also found out, not to sound too flip about it, but in 2004, 2005, when it did spike up a gallon or two of gas, a dollar per gallon, you're still buying gasoline for police cars. You're not parking them. You're not gonna park fire trucks. If it's $10 a gallon, you're gonna buy it. They may be the only car on the road. But it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, that you want those police cars to be mobile. That goes back to vehicle maintenance too. We fixed them. We don't have a choice, and they're not abused. They get a lot of miles on them. They wear through tires. License plate lights fall all the time.
Yeah,
But they have to be top operating condition at all times, so
one of
stay on
the,
top of that stuff.
one of the,
And that's why I'm not like throwing a fit. I mean, we could leave a buffer in there. Who knows? A natural disaster could hit and take refineries down and it could go to $6 a gallon for all we know. But, you know, barring that, I don't think we'll see much of a difference over the next 12 months.
yeah, yeah, that's one, with the vehicle maintenance, that's one of the sticking points is that with these guys out there writing tickets for violations, we have to make sure that our vehicles are not in violation. So that's what you're saying about those license plate lights. People don't realize that, but we get a lot of stops for that and they're preface stops, but we have to make sure ours aren't. But Bob also does a good job with keeping those gas tanks full, and if he sees it start to spike, he fills them up. Correct me if I'm wrong. So that's it. I'm done complimenting you now.
Before we move to the next page, I actually, I'm just curious in the opposite direction, and don't take this as a complaint, but I was looking at, it is the PD overtime wages, 4,100, 183. I noticed the forecast for this year, 99 and change, actual last year, 97, let's say. We're budgeting lower. I hope it's lower, but
Right. So yes, with the overtime, it's kind of tricky because a lot of those, well, like we talked about, the reimbursable funds don't go into that line item. So a lot of that 27,000 of it, say, is going back into the township, but it's going back into current year revenue. As opposed, the same with what I'm being told as well. If we get reimbursed for something that occurred last calendar year, it goes into prior year expenses. Correct?
Yeah.
So I don't know where that money goes. I'm not paid enough to know that, but I know it's there. But that's, yeah, that's.
The
27,000.
the other thing, the two new officers, at least you've got some new guys coming up.
Right, so we do anticipate that overtime going down because of that. It's kind of tricky, it's because it's tough to remember, but we were really short and hurting at the beginning of the year with manpower, and we did have to fill some shifts. Anytime a major incident occurs or multiple incidents occur during a day, it's kind of an all hands on deck, or we call people in. That's where this line item really gets chewed up. Those two things. So it's somewhat unexpected. And again, it's one of those line items that we could put that at 0, but we're still gonna have to pay it. We could
Yeah.
also put it at 100 and yeah.
My
we die.
concern was more that are we under budgeting that line item and not gonna budget the adequate amount?
Based on our staffing levels that we're anticipating that we have, I believe that it actually will go down. But again, when we get back here next November, it's going to look like it's overspent, but with that current year revenue, that's where that money's gonna go.
Could I ask you one more quick thing? The top line, wages, chief, department, lieutenant, is that 3 or 4 people?
3.
3.
Yes, 3.
And the PD wages 29, or am I wrong?
No, the PD wages should be at 30.
No, 20 people.
People.
Oh, yes,
29.
yes.
And the insurance, is that just 29 or is that everybody? So that would be, what is that, 33 people in total?
Yes, that should be everybody.
Would it be 33? I'm adding
Yeah.
in the assistant and in there as well.
So it should be, for wages, it should be 29.
Right,
Wait, I'm
that's for
sorry.
patrol and detectives. Of the
So
wages.
28. 28. It should be
28.
28. 28 for wages, and then 3 for wages, chief, deputy chief, and lieutenant. So that's 3, total 31,
31 for the insurance then.
correct?
Is the analyst in there too?
Yes, the analyst would be in the insurance as
So
well.
that'll be 32 then?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's it.
Back to the fuel, just real quick. We track the fuel. I think it takes us down to the hundredth of a gallon. We have what's called a gas buoy system. You swipe a fob, it records every vehicle, all the mileage. We could even bury you in data about gasoline if you would like. I know you
It's
don't want
okay.
that, but just saying it's out there if you ever have a question, by vehicle, by driver, the whole 9 yards.
So moving on to page 2, if we could look at capital. We're in our 5th year of the 5-year cycle for our tasers. That's a fixed amount. We are going to have to look at a quote or look at our needs for moving forward for our tasers. At this time, I don't believe, I mean, they're always upgrading, they're always introducing new models, but I think our models are still good. So it's going to be the question of how long we're going to be able to stay where we're at before we would have to look at another agreement for multi-year agreement for tasers.
Question, Chief, that it's the same manufacturer as the body worn cameras?
Correct, Axon, yes.
Maybe we could ask them for a volume discount?
Yeah, because we spent a lot of money. Yes, as you can see, that's actually really good. One of the things that really helped us out, because I know in previous years we looked at an evidence management system when it came to the overwhelming amount of digital evidence that we have. Our servers were filling up, and when we started looking at the platform for our tasers and the digital evidence, we were able to. One of the reasons we went with the Axon body cameras is that platform rolled right into all of that digital evidence. So we were able to transfer an incredible amount of data on digital evidence onto that cloud through evidence.com, which resolved their issues with exploring an evidence program. So body cameras, this is going to be our first year. As you remember, the district attorney's office paid for the first year of all of our body worn camera, and that price is going to be $37,918. And that will be our second year in a 5-year camera agreement. I'm sorry, 5-year, yes, body camera agreement. I would look to ask the board to allow me to purchase a vehicle this coming year for out of capital. I would really caution against, if you will, kicking the can down the road and not budgeting for a vehicle. I know it's an expense, but the way these vehicles are used, to get on a good, to continue to be on a good vehicle program, at minimum, I would be recommending 1 vehicle a year. In years past, since I've been here, we did, I think 1 year or 2 years in a row, not purchase a vehicle. And then the following year, we ended up having to buy 4 vehicles. So I think in order to not do that, we should look at least replacing 1 vehicle every year in the fleet.
Are you looking hybrid there again, Chief?
Well, I'm not sure, because I don't know if we have a lemon or if this is all the hybrids, but that hybrid's been out more than it's been in service. We've been having some issues. The latest issue that we had was identified through the dealer as a fuel maintenance system issue. And evidently, ironically, a hybrid vehicle, if you fill the gas tank up too high, it affects the performance and creates issues and problems for the vehicle. So that was identified and we were able to, upon direction from Public Works, just fill it till it hits it and then you're done, till it pops off. So we're gonna start doing that, but unfortunately, we weren't able to even get that far because I think if as soon as it was put online for service, the check engine light came on again. So it's out again. So the jury's still out on that. We're still looking at it. So
You put too much fuel in it, it tricks the evaporation recovery system. So it recirculates the evaporated fuel and you put too much in, that throws it off. And it's not a problem with the police department, but their standard operating procedure is at the end of every shift, you top off your car. Whether you drove it 6 miles or 60, that's what you do. So we got around that. Ironically, now we think that the latest, not check engine light, but all these lights are right next together. It's a service light. Now we think we have a problem with the starting battery in the battery powered car. Because the starting battery is different than the hybrid battery. It's complicated. And we learn something new every time we take it down.
I do want to let the board know, oh, I'm sorry, about vehicles. We did apply for a grant in the LSA, the small LSA grouping for another a vehicle that is compatible with the therapy dogs. We have vehicles for them, but a third vehicle can also function as a regular patrol vehicle. It can do both. If one of the therapy dog vehicles goes down, there would be another one to take its place. The CFA, the Commonwealth Financing Agency, won't consider those grants until March. So we'll see if we get that.
I was just gonna, this is not specific to any line item or, but the topic of vehicles and sort of those large capital expenditures got my mind back to some conversations I think we had over time around lines of credit to sort of finance these large capital expenditures. I don't think now is the time to fully flesh that out, but to maybe take the bite off of some of these large expenditures might be something I think would be worth exploring.
If there's enough in total across all the different departments.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not for one department, but like if we could take out some sort of municipal credit line to sort of soften these high capital expenditures there, if it makes sense, just something maybe we can continue talking about.
That's definitely a decision of the board. That topic has come up numerous times in the past. Previous boards have elected not to do that, but that's certainly an option.
And if that's pretty much all I have under the, you'll see fire police, that's obviously self-explanatory, those line items there. One of the things that you'll see is the points, police points, fire police points, those points are the total activity for the year. And then we look at the mileage and activity of each individual fire police officer, and they're assessed or assigned points by the number of times that they go out and help. And that determines how much their stipend is or payment is. Anytime the fire police, which is often, assist other municipalities or organizations in traffic details, they will be sometimes reimbursed, not reimbursed, but given a donation. And that the donation goes under this line item when they come in. Like, for example, the county recycling every year has 2 events down at the intermediate school. They're very they run very smoothly because they've been doing it and we've been helping them for years now. And they provide us with a nice donation to be able to put back into that fire police points, which is really nice. That's all I really have.
Thank you. Any other comments about that? Okay, moving on to buildings and grounds and highway with Bob McNichols.
The, just to let you know, the management wages for Mr. McNichols, Mr. Yost, myself, Patty, are spread across various line items. And you'll see line items associated with management in several of the departments. And those are the first two line items. However, I have reduced my the manager wages out of buildings and grounds to 0 for this year. We take a look every year at where are we doing the most work? Where do we expect to do the most work? And I just wanted to point that out. Mrs. O'Leary had already noticed that. There's not a whole lot going on here. One thing that happens with buildings and grounds, there are numerous contracts. If you go down to contracted services, which is in the middle of the page, right under services, says 4090-300. That includes pest control, mowing, the generator, preventive maintenance. There are numerous the maintenance of the cooling tower. There are numerous services under contracted services. If you ever have any questions about that, we can certainly provide you a detailed list. But that's why that number is relatively high, because it encompasses a number of services for buildings and grounds maintenance. Engineering services is just that. You can imagine that with the handicap ramps that we're currently restoring, that you have to make sure that they're in correctly. The phone switches. I want to talk about the phone switches. I might have mentioned this at a previous meeting. The phone system that we have was picked out in 2014 and installed, I believe, in 2015. And the switches associated with it, we have numerous lines here, voice over IP, and the switches are original to the system. And in technology years, they're practically the age of the dinosaurs. And we have found that there are incompatibilities with other technology. So we have to change out those switches. We have a quote for approximately $13,300, and that work is going to be taking place shortly. The cost of that project is divvied up amongst various funds. For the general fund, I'm attributing the general fund portion to buildings and grounds, and I have a note there. And I put it under communications. You'll see that in the fourth quarter, all of a sudden the cost pops up like that. That's because of the phone switches. And another line item that I want to draw your attention to is the utilities line item. We've only been on public water here for, I think, 3 or 4 quarters. I think only 3 quarters. And we're still getting a history of what the water use on the campus looks like. So this is a little bit of a guess. In terms of the electric for these buildings, Public Works has done a wonderful job of converting all the light fixtures to LED. All the lights above your head, everything's LED. Trying to get the most efficiency out of everything. We've also, if you prior years to 2024 are not reflected on this, but if you go down to the water purity line item, if you go back to 2023 and prior, that line item was about $15,000 or so, because we were at that time on well, and there were various tests that had to be done and various maintenance on the well, because this is a public building. So that line item has actually been reduced over time, the water purity line item. And the utilities, we'll see how it pans out with being on public water, and what the water usage is like. But those projects are complete, and we thank this board and prior boards for helping us with that. One thing that's not,
Saved us several hours of labor
Yeah.
every day. The labor was huge.
yeah, I forgot about that. Thank you. I also want to draw your attention down at the bottom to fitness room replacements. As the commissioners may know, there is a fitness room here that employees can use when they get sign off from their physician. Most of the equipment in that fitness room was purchased with a fire grant. So some of that equipment is going over to the fire station when the fire station is ready for it. There is an accumulation of donations to the police department to the tune of about $20,000. And a number of police officers use the fitness room in this building. So the proposal is to replace and perhaps rent certain pieces of equipment supplemented with those donations. And that's what the notation is off to the side. You might recall Lieutenant Besner, who was just sworn in on Tuesday. He's the fitness officer, and I can't think of anybody better. So he will be in charge of making that happen and choosing the equipment and whatnot.
Gene, with utilities, you didn't mention gas,
Oh, yes, thank you.
because
Yeah.
now we switched everything over to gas.
Yes, yes.
Backup generators are propane, but the heating system is gas.
Correct, thank you. So the utility, I didn't provide this graph, but I've done this before about the utilities attributed to the campus over time. I remember doing this several years ago. We've actually reduced the utilities cost overall of the campus since I became employed here. It's less than half, believe it or not. From all the efficiencies, dealing with the water system, dealing with the heating system, because propane is way more expensive than the natural gas. So these investments have been a good return. One thing that is not on this spreadsheet for buildings and grounds is, you may recall we've alluded to a need to work on the roof for both the recreation building and the public works, the flat portion of the building. We have a quote for that. It was not included here. And I think one of the things that we can take a look at, I would not like to discuss that ad nauseum at the moment, but if there's any elbow room that we make in the budget at all, it's something that we should consider doing those roof projects. Certainly the recreation building, it's not worth doing that until after the contractors are all out of there. And but that is a project that can't be forgotten. We may end up having to do it depending on if we have a bad winter. We may end up doing it anyway.
We have strategically placed cones at the rec center for the leaks, so we've got that problem mitigated at this time.
Thank you. That's all that I have for buildings and grounds, unless you have questions.
Gina, is the custodian wages is probably the only full salary on here. I guess the other two are fractional, if I had to guess, just eyeballing them. The maintenance wages and assistant super, those are fractional probably.
Yeah, the custodial wages, that's also partly fractional as well.
Oh, it is.
It's between this and Park and Rec.
Okay.
Because even though we're not doing active Park and Rec things at the moment, the recreation building still needs attention. There's still trash to be picked up at the playgrounds, etc. Maintenance wages is for when stuff breaks.
We also have the custodian fill in, help out with snowstorms.
Yeah, that's,
So
yeah,
if we have a big storm, Jill is a well-qualified snowplow operator, CDL license. So we'll throw him in a truck if things are getting ugly, if we don't need to stay here, especially on the weekends or nights.
And I would assume the maintenance wages is what in the highway? That's the, where the rest of it is?
yeah, no, that's the mechanics, wages or anyone who does, it's not just the mechanics, actually, I believe the parking lot lights are often taken care of by sewer, correct? The sewer crew. They're kind of also our electrical crew. When they do, for example, when I came in this morning, two of the sewer crew were working on the lights to the upstairs entrance around where the new handicap ramp is. And that the time that they spent working on that will be attributed to this line item. But they won't earn any more money, but it'll be a shifting, and that's why when you see the actuals in January, that's why some of this doesn't match up, because they were still working at their prescribed rate according to their contract, but they spent time doing something out of what they usually do. That's also why, in the refuse fund, if you recall, the fourth quarter has a huge pop-up in wages because all the highway guys are collecting leaves every day for 12 weeks. So we can wait till Andy gets back if you wish. We can move on to highway when he gets back.
Yeah, just a question on the buildings and grounds page, the general fund, the last row where the total cost buildings and grounds with
Oh,
386 plus 95 should come, that's, I didn't even use my calculator yet, but that's certainly more than 351. Right? Those two columns should add up to what the total cost is for the year, if I'm reading it correctly. Okay. Okay. Same or total personnel cost. Okay.
Thank you. Sometimes the formulas do that, but I'll revise that. You're right. That's not correct. Thank you so much. I'll just check all those. Okay. I have my thumb drive with me, but I don't have my computer with me.
I think the other ones are right, Jane, if I'm just eyeballing them. Yeah.
Highways next on the agenda. It's on page 7 of the spreadsheet. Again, just to be clear, the superintendent, assistant superintendent, those are fractional. Part of their wages also come out of sewer. Part of Mr. Yost's wages come out of buildings and grounds as well. There are, when you come to the management wages, except for the chiefs, they are spread across their cost centers depending on various duties that we perform in these various departments. And you can see my note about highway wages, that in October and November, a great deal of the public works staff is taken up with leaf collection, and that's reflected in the refuse fund. Streetlight wages refers to, I don't know if the board is aware, we actually own the streetlights that are energized by PP&L, but they're owned by the township. So there is streetlight repair work that is done by township forces, and we a number of years ago began to capture that in a line item. In the streetlights, most of the streetlights in the township are energized by Met Ed, generally owned by Met Ed with a tariff that, and I'm not talking about a goods tariff, that's the name of the rental, if you will, that the township has to pay for a Met Ed streetlight. However, there are various locations in the township where Met Ed owns certain components of the streetlight and the township owns other components. There have been a couple of articles in the news about the county is also in a similar dilemma with respect to some streetlights where they own the pole, Met Ed owns the luminaire, or vice versa. Streetlights can get very complicated. When somebody complains about a streetlight that is out, that is Met Ed energized, we have to have Met Ed investigate it first. Sometimes streetlights are not top of Met Ed's list, unfortunately. So they have to investigate it first because they own components of the whole structure. A streetlight has a number of components to it: the luminaire, the pole, the connection at the bottom, the wiring that feeds it. There are probably other terms that I am skipping over. So I know it gets very difficult at this time of year. Everybody wants the street lights to be 100% operational all the time, and it's very dark outside. But depending on the exact situation, it can take a while. That's my PSA.
Even with the PP&L lights, we own the poles and the lights, the light heads and the wiring in Thomas Gardens. Same with Governor Point, but you get down to Gerald Avenue and we only own the light head. So it depends. Mike has a spreadsheet. There are 15 or 20 different categories, and we always have to refer back to the spreadsheet. If we own everything, there's a tag on it that says Cumru Township. There's about 600 lights total, 200 PPL, 400 Met Ed, and it's interesting.
I wanted to point out something relative to the highway department overtime wages. The board may recall that last year we had a bit of a winter, and the prior 2 years we had very, very mild winters. You can see the pop-up in overtime wages, and that is partly due to January, February timeframe when we did have some winter. It is just like we were discussing with the police, it is impossible to entirely predict overtime because Mother Nature doesn't give us a heads up on what she's going to do. Unfortunately, given the fact that we've already had flurries, and Bob told me it was sleeting the other day, I think we're in for more of a winter this year, this December, January, February than we had even last year.
And it depends on the timing. The one year we had, it was almost like clockwork. Every Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock, it started snowing. Well, it wasn't just overtime, it was double time. That was 4 or 5 years ago. They don't necessarily have to be big storms. We still have to go out and treat those storms. So it's about the timing, and we have no control over that. So it's a wag, as they would say.
Just quick on that. I think that's prudent. I've been following some of the weather forecasting. We're in a La Nina in the Pacific, and they're saying it's going to be a harder winter, potentially across the board in the northern United States. Before we move on to the materials and supplies, I did just want to ask about 4,300, 156. It looks like in the last 2 years, that's going to be about $100,000 increase. Could you just talk about what's going on there?
Yeah, 19.6% increase for 2026. And generally, now, I have to back off that a little bit. And that was a hair trigger response. The Teamsters, health insurance that covers management and police, and anyone who's not a Teamster is the 19.6% increase. The Teamsters have an increase, but not as much. Another thing that happens, though, is when people change their status. The Teamsters health insurance, it has more categories than the other health insurance. So, for instance, single employee, married employee with no children, single parent with children, 2 parents with children. And one of the things that's reflected are changes in status of people to the higher categories. They don't have the Teamsters don't have as much of an increase, but they've had a lot of movement within their cohort in the categories. But what we will do is, Kristen can help me with this, is check to make sure that is a reasonable number.
Sure.
Which we will do.
I'm not suggesting it's not. It just
No,
was one of the more notable
it's good to
trends that stood out.
I have no problem with going back and checking the numbers.
And Gene, based off of what you said earlier, is it safe to assume all these salaries are fractional in here too?
The Teamsters are less fractional. In other words, the wages line item, the 140, is mostly a good line item, but as I said, that the highway guys are working for the refuse fund for almost 3 months. Certainly the management wages are definitely fractional, and I can provide you those. So the answer basically is yes. Most of the highway wages are captured in the 4,300, 140, but even that is not 100%. That also includes the mechanics, who also spread their time out fixing police cars and doing all kinds of things.
And how many is that well, how many people is that?
There are 2 mechanics.
There's 11 people in the highway department, 2 of them are mechanics. The mechanics get spread out pretty well, and if you see their time cards, it's rare that they work on the same department all day long. Jack worked on a fire truck for 6 hours today and a police car for 2 hours. Darren worked on a police car, a highway car, buildings and ground stuff. It's all over the place. For the mechanics mostly, but it's not uncommon for the highway guys to help out sewer guys, or sewer guys to back up the highway guys. And they just note that on their time card, and it bounces all over, depending on where we need the forces. And it's also dependent on who's not around. Yesterday we sent the entire sewer department to a class, which was conveniently down at the Best Western. Pennsylvania Rural Water put on a good class. So anything that happened yesterday with sewer, we pulled the highway guy to help out with that.
Is there, so I guess this would just come off the top of your head, like, do you know what an average public works worker costs? Like, it's hard to do the math when everybody's spread across like multiple
It
funds,
probably averages out over the course of the year,
Yeah.
unless we have a really bad winter.
right? But I'm trying to get to the number, basically. So like,
Teamsters contract with me. I can certainly go get one.
I mean, wait, you don't have to go hunt it down.
Kristen has a better number.
Is the average. Yeah, it's horseshoes and hand grenades here, so that's okay. Yeah.
I like that.
I'm sorry, Kristen, does that include the benefits too, or is that just straight salary? Do you know what the benefits would be too? Or I'm pushing the envelope now? Yeah. It's all
Yeah,
good.
it does get complicated because of all those different categories for the health insurance.
The average cost for public works benefits.
Class two highway worker, $73,798 a year, plus benefits.
Oh, benefits are on top. Okay, I follow you.
We
Could probably estimate what, like maybe 22. Yeah, that's the same thing I was thinking. All right. You said 22. Are you talking 22,000 or 22%? Oh, okay.
You're looking at about 102 per,
Per person.
because most of them, I think, have a family of some, they have multiple categories, so
Okay, makes sense.
called 100 grand, round number. Those are 2026 numbers.
If we go down to, in the middle of the page, there are a lot of references to storm sewers. First of all, our MS4 permit, the DEP, first, right above that it says storm sewers 4360-200. You may recall that at your last meeting, you approved an emergency repair to some storm sewers. That accounts for why that amount pops up in the fourth quarter. The next line item, MS4 permits. The DEP is requiring the township and other municipalities to all refile their MS4 NPDES permit. Our stormwater engineer is working on that application. We, and by that I mean the Wyomissing Creek Watershed Coalition, of which I am the chair, we're hoping that the DEP would give more of a grace period, because the DEP took about 1.5 years to even give us our permits. However, he is working on that application. It's really uncertain as to how much time he will need to give to that application, but that's why there's a substantial amount of money in the fourth quarter there. That filing that permit is not optional. Stormwater engineering, we did not do a whole lot of storm sewer work this year. So you can see the difference from the prior year in the engineering costs. In regard to equipment, the reference to the nozzle is the vac truck that you usually think of being a sewer piece of equipment also does other things. It can blow debris out of storm sewers, it can soft dig, etc. And there was a particular nozzle or piece of equipment for that was paid out of this line item. We're going to include some more storm sewer, storm.
That was the vacuum nozzle,
Okay.
not the high pressure water nozzle.
Okay. We're gonna include some more information in the refuse and recycling calendar to fulfill some of our public education requirements under our MS4 permit. A couple of line items, that I'd like to point out, we did not do crack sealing this year. That's at the end of this section. We also did not do any guide rail repair this year. I've budgeted small amounts of money to hopefully do that kind of work next year. If we go down to the next section, similarly for in the middle of the next section, traffic markings and long line painting. Long line painting are the yellow lines and the white lines on the roads. We deferred those in 2025. I threw them back in the budget for 2026. The most we've ever gone without doing that work is 1 year in between because the markings fade too much. Now the long line painting, we take advantage of a county group contract for that. That's probably the best use of the Berks County Joint Purchasing Council. So I highly recommend keeping those items in the budget for 2026. Bob, I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything else in this section.
No, you hit the hot spots, the onlys and arrows, which is the traffic markings that we do in-house. And the long line painting is really very important. It helps with these country roads, especially on nights like this, when it's starting to get a little, when it gets dark so early, but they do fade.
The next section, capital, I'll briefly describe it, but I would like to, since you have a meeting scheduled for Monday, I'd like to revisit it after we discuss things some more. We've applied for an LSA grant for these two vehicles that are off to the right here. And you'll notice I did not include those costs directly in the budget. I'd like to revisit that depending on what the board does with the overall budget. I don't know if there's anything else to say on that, but.
Yeah, we pushed off truck 65 and truck 88 last year. Truck 65 is really showing its age. That's a 2014 F550. That's what we use we call it the sign truck, but we also plow with it and do a lot of other stuff. So we did get quotes on those that you included in that LSA grant.
Yep. And the other one is at one of the big dumps, right?
Correct.
I'm sorry?
The big dump is the 200.
Oh,
not
yes.
The 100.
Yes. Yes. Did something not add up again?
Well. My question was on line 4830-002-010-3. And that number, there isn't any total for 2025, yet it shows in the final number. And then also the increase, if you could speak to that, but
Right.
52% increase.
The increase is because there was a fundamental change in the nature of the pension plan. It went from being a hybrid, unique, defined contribution plan to return to a defined benefit plan. And that increased the cost of the MMO. And so what happens is that the MMO is the minimum municipal obligation, the amount that the municipality is required to contribute to a pension plan every year in order to keep the plan solvent. And there's a calculation that the certain elements of the calculation are provided by the actuary, and then the municipality plugs in estimated payroll for the current year. The arithmetic, it's relatively simple arithmetic once you get the actuary's numbers, and it spits out a number at the bottom, and then the next calendar year that must be deposited into the pension plan. Okay. When this current contract with the Teamsters started in 2024, there was a fundamental change in the nature of the pension plan, which changed the costs associated with the plan. And that's the primary driver behind the increase in cost. In regard to what happens is when we pay that out of the same line item, the 4830,002, and then later distribute according to where the payroll has gone. And while I was doing the budget, it was frankly just easier to show for 2025 how we distributed it and how we anticipate distributing it for 2026. Again, this is another one where I would be happy to have Kristen look at what I did. I did find the spreadsheet I was looking for. But that explains the nature of it. I didn't feel that you never get it in the first 3/4 of the year. That would have been a zero anyway. And for 2025, the budget is how it's distributed. So I know this is not a very good explanation, except for the nature of the increase or why the increase. I can change the display to make it flow a little better. You will see this repeated in some of the other departments.
That gets reimbursed by state aid, right?
Partly, yes.
Oh, partly.
Yes.
So is this the amount that's not reimbursed that's on here?
No, it's not correct. If you go to the revenue page, which is page 1 of this entire thing, in the middle of the revenue page, you will see 3550,001 and 3550,002. Those are the two line items where the state aid comes in. Now, for 3550,001, the PD, that's all general fund. That's the entire amount of the general fund. For 3550,002, that amount is the amount attributable to the general fund. Remember, the non-uniform people are spread across general, refuse, fire. Currently the firefighters are in the non-uniform plan. Sewer, it's spread all over the place. So this is just the portion that's deposited into the general fund, but it offsets the MMO cost to the general fund. So the grant is a partial grant.
That's what I was getting at. And generally speaking, what does it cover, like percentage wise?
It's been covering 30 to 40%.
Okay.
It floats a little bit every year. Currently, the unit value is, believe it or not, $6,666, and that was the last unit value. It covers it does not cover 40% of the police costs. It covers about 30% of the police costs, except that next year the police pension fund has done well enough that the MMO has decreased, and the grant will cover more than 50%. If it stays at the same level, will cover more than 50% of the police MMO, just because of the status of the fund and the status of the retirees, etc. In regard to the non-uniform fund, if it stays at the same level, it'll cover about 1/3 of it. And this and it only covers employees who have been with the township for a minimum of 6 months of that year. So that, if an employee is brand new, they get hired in October, we will not receive any coverage for them in the next year. It'll skip. It's a formula. So now back to Mark's question. I will try to make this a little clearer, but there is a good reason for the change in the magnitude of the MMO. Where would you, I don't know where the board would like to go now. I certainly don't want to belabor other points. We can go to administration if you like.
Okay. Yeah, you can go into administration.
The first line under administration is the commissioners do get a wage. Commissioners are called statutory employees, meaning there is a stipend associated with the commissioners, but the commissioners are not employees in the traditional sense. That stipend is set by the first class township code. And it goes by population. The population threshold we're at is 15,000. If the population of the township ever goes to 20,000, that amount will go up. And frankly, 15 is enough. In regard to contracted services, one of the things that's occurring in contracted services is when non-residential building inspections are done by Terry Noggle of GVC, and when those invoices are paid, they're paid out of this line item. And I just made a particular note in that respect. In regard to, as you get down, the board may recall that there was a change in the previous, or in the term that we're in for the tax collector. There was an ordinance adopted to change the nature of her compensation. That does not take effect until January. But when that happens, these extraneous line items will discontinue. The Act 511 tax clerk line item will discontinue, and in the refuse fund clerk line item will discontinue because of that. You can only change compensation for an elected official. Let's say all of a sudden we had a census and the census popped up to 20,000 and commissioners were able to get a larger stipend. That would not take effect until after the next election. You cannot increase your own salary during your term. And the same goes for the tax collector. With respect to the building inspector and code enforcement, the board may recall that we previously had 2 employees in the codes department. We only have 1 currently, and again, Mr. Noggle from GVC is the inspector for non-residential. But we don't want to, we haven't chosen to delete the building inspector a line item. We're just not populating it. Planning wages is partly Patty Wagnesic-Pfeiffer, she's the planning secretary, and partly myself. Zoning wages have decreased because, as you know, we've changed the nature of how zoning hearings are administered. That zoning wages was attributable to any Teamsters that were performing as secretary for the zoning hearing board. The reason I populated a small amount of money is if we ever have a zoning case where we need some assistance from overtime from the Teamsters, that there's a little bit of money in there. You can see again the non-uniform phenomenon that Mr. Ferrero was referring to in the MMO. The tax collector has an office here in the building, as you know, and there are expenses associated with her function. Inspectors' expenses refer to training and other items, new code books, etc. As we're traveling down, interestingly, I want to point out something in relation to the bonding with that first line under services. One of the frustrations with respect to anything involving insurances, whether it's auto insurance, and of course we have quite a few, how many vehicles do we have? 75 vehicles. There are quite a few vehicles. There's workers' comp, of course, for all the employees. There's liability. There's public officials liability insurance, referring to errors and omissions insurance for the commissioners. There's police liability insurance, etc. One of the frustrations is that our insurance year goes from April 13th to April 13th, and it's very hard to forecast these insurance numbers. In addition, every year the insurance agency, EH&D, which specializes in municipal insurance, they go out for competitive quotes for us to get the best rate possible. And insurance companies package things differently. So I know that Mrs. O'Leary, when she was a commissioner, and I have had this discussion several times, that sometimes, for example, I know that Kristen did sort of an audit of the workers' comp insurance of how they were classifying the different employees, and will affect these numbers. Back to the bonding, a couple of years ago, the bonding for the treasurer and myself was very high. It has obviously come down, as you can see here, and in fact, we got a refund of Peggy Carpenter's bond, and we're actually in the good. I've never even seen that before. We are paying for our bonds. We can show you that. It's just that it's been something quirky, that they repackaged the costs, and we got a refund of Peggy's bond. And those are only paid once a year at the beginning of the year. In regard to legal services, that's also rather difficult to pin down right now. We've had, as you know, some litigation. The Board of Commissioners also has asked the solicitor to research a zoning matter that was discussed on Tuesday. And that some of that is reflected in the legal services planning line item, which is down towards the bottom. So the legal services are certainly variable. In regard to legal services developers, those are, for instance, if our solicitor drafts an improvements agreement on a developer's behalf, they have to reimburse the township for that work. That's why there are two different line items. One thing I have to ask the board primarily, Greg, is there anything that should be put in the consultant line item?
I would say 150,000.
Thank you.
And then I would also say another 30,000 for legal services. Excuse me.
For the planning?
For additional legal services, yeah.
Yeah.
Like over and above.
Specifically in the planning because that's 414314.
I'm not exactly sure where you would throw it.
If it's involved with the Lancaster Pike corridor, that's where I would put it. Okay.
I mean, I guess we could always move it if needed.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. All right, thank you. That was a question that I had. In regard to the newer zoning hearing solicitor, we're still trying to get a bit of a handle on those costs. Do not be surprised if I recommend, or if Patty recommends an increase in the zoning hearing fee, application fee. We're okay right now, but it's definitely a more expensive process right now.
Gee,
Than it used to be. Yes.
I do not see a line item that Greg and Andrew apply for that $4.2 million grant with a 2.1 million match. Where was that gonna fall?
I do not have a line item.
There's no needed for that. There's no match required.
Yeah, you said it's a $2.1 million match.
No, I
Four
didn't.
4.2 and a township 2.1 million match.
No, there's no township match on that. That's a private investment. It goes by the value of their land to cover the match for private entities. This isn't nothing that we're investing on the township end.
That's not how you presented it.
Yeah, that's how I presented it. I don't know what your takeaway was, but that was the presentation.
I remember it, and there was a $2.1 million match.
All right, there's no match.
On the next page, I wanted to point out, there's the contribution to the library, as you're well aware, the Wyomissing Creek watershed allocation. Again, the Wyomissing Creek Watershed Coalition, Cumru Township participates in that. There is an agreement, an intergovernmental agreement for a $50,000 contribution by the larger municipalities. There are 8 municipalities in the Wyomissing Creek Watershed Coalition. Wyomissing, Spring, and Cumru are the 3 with the largest amounts of land in the watershed. And we have been building up an escrow fund to do projects, especially a project that is in the borough of Moulton that directly leads to a property in Cumru Township. Unfortunately, about a month ago, the DEP decided that the previous level of permitting that they had indicated would be sufficient for the project is no longer sufficient, and we have to go for a much higher level of permitting, which will take probably a year to get that permit. And this is a required project for us to do this. For that reason, the Wyomissing Creek Watershed Coalition stated to its members that the contribution for 2025 will not be required. So you can see that we haven't sent a check in for 2025, and we will not. We have it budgeted for next year, 2026. It would not shock me if it needs to get deferred even another year. But I wanted to point out why that wasn't expensed and is not intended to be expensed. You can also see the $10,000 that the debt service fund needed to borrow. We have discussed that previously with respect to the debt service fund, and there for administration there is no capital that is planned.
Going back to the quantities of people here, if I'm reading this, there's probably a lot of single people, I'm guessing, on here. Business personnel wages, is that a person or is that fractional?
Almost all management is fractional. That is Kristen's position. We can get you the spreadsheet that shows how everyone's divvied up. The manager's salary is divided up into probably 8 different categories. Kristen's about 4, Bob's only 2, Mike's is 3.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need to see the divide. It's just kind of like same kind of question, like as Public Works. Like what's the head count, the average on the admin side? Do you know that?
The administrative assistants, if you're talking about the Teamsters, the administrative assistants.
Yeah.
One whole body is paid out of sewer, one whole body is paid out of refuse. Is that correct?
There's only one that's fully paid out of sewer. I believe the other 4 are divvied across several.
So 5 total. Do you know what the average is off the top of your head? Again, I'm taxing the memory here a little bit.
Not really, because it's just based on a percentage of what we estimated their usage was in other departments.
Well, I'm getting at the average salary, kind of like what we did for Public
Wait.
Works.
Yeah.
Just a rough, I would say it's gonna be very close to what the other Teamsters are because they all have the same contract.
Oh, so Public Works and admin paid basically the same?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, all of our admin staff falls under Teamsters.
Okay, no more research needed if that's the case then. Is recreation, I see it on the agenda. Is that in here too, or am I just
Yeah,
missing it?
it's the last page, and I didn't expect us to get this far, so I didn't bring all of my materials with me, but I would like to say something about recreation. When the fire station project phase 1 started, phase 1 was the utilities. Also around the same time, the Park and Recreation Board was having trouble making a quorum. So essentially, the Park and Recreation Board during the fire station project has been in suspended animation. A couple of those individuals have moved out of the township. However, we still do have an active ordinance for Park and Recreation Board. And a few weeks ago, I received a letter. I've not given it yet to the board because actually I was anticipating discussing this on Monday. But we've received a letter from one of the Park and Recreation Board members. His name is Nick Saraday. He's an engineer in his own right. I believe he works for Spot Stevens and McCoy. And he is very, very interested in resurrecting the Park and Recreation Board when the fire station project is done. And I've had some communication with him since then and noted to him that what really needs to happen is the township needs to do an open space plan. If the township intends to apply for any grants, that will be one of the first things any granting agency is looking for is an updated open space plan. You can either hire a consultant. There are plenty of consultants out there. Delta could probably do one for you.
It's
However,
really in the final plan, what you're talking about.
well, I would highly recommend discussing this with Nick. He has also volunteered, partly because of his credentials, to also work on an open space plan, and he has done them for other entities. At the very least, my recommendation would be to resurrect, reactivate, whatever R word you'd like to use, the Park and Recreation Board, reappoint him. I've also been in touch with another person who was on the Park and Recreation Board. And if there are other individuals that you would like to look at for that board, and again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but the Board of Commissioners needs to decide what you want recreation in this township to look like. There are different approaches to recreation. Do you want the playgrounds and courts version of recreation? Do you want more of the open space, passive recreation, or trails? We've talked about a boat launch, which is, I'm sure, in Schuylkill River Greenway's long-term plan. And that's what the open space plan is for. And clearly, Mr. Saraday and this other individual would like to be very much involved with the construction of that open space plan. And I would certainly recommend taking advantage of his expertise. So that being said, on this budget, park and recreation is still quite minimal. As again, we're just in a holding pattern at the moment. I did not insert any monies for a consultant or anything else in this. I did not know that they were going to do a plan. May I invite Mr. Saraday to the January 16th meeting that Delta's having?
Oh, I think, is it the 13th?
Or is it the 13th? Sorry.
It's a public meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Anybody can.
But I mean, I would, since he has expressed such an interest, I'd like to extend an email to him.
I forget where it is in the plan. I don't think it's year one. I think it's back a little bit further, but I could be wrong about that. I just don't remember off the top of my head.
I will encourage him to come.
Just a quick comment.
Yeah.
It doesn't pertain to the budget, but I am familiar with Nick.
Oh, he's a
Wait,
really nice guy.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. And I'll reach out to him and.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, please let him know that, yeah, I have, it actually is right next to my computer on my desk, this letter he wrote. He wrote a very good letter.
Gene, with
Yeah.
the addition of 180,000 for the services and administration and codes, that 364 is gonna be wrong now. Because Greg raised that by 180,000. Be on page 3,
Okay,
because he added 150,000 for Delta and 30,000 more for legal, so that's 180,000 increase. So it'd no longer be 364, 675. It'd be 544, 675.
And then for recreation, can we add 7,500 for a recreation activity or opportunity as well?
which line item would you like?
Where that would fall.
What do you mean an opportunity?
Well, it's not on the agenda, so I don't want to get into a discussion on it tonight, but it would be.
I just kind of want to know generally, what are your, an event?
It would open up additional recreation services for the township.
Well, then that sounds like contracted services.
That's probably a good place for it.
Okay, so I'll increase that to 8,000. And then, okay. So, with these adjustments, clearly the numbers at the bottom will change a bit. The good news, and there is good news, the good news is that the projected end of 2025, we will still be above $3 million, which is kind of our threshold that we're always looking for. The not as good news is that we will be, again, using these projections below $3 million for the end of 2026. And
Gina, if I'm reading
Yeah.
this right, aren't we at 2 and 2.4 by the end of the year?
right, yes, it's right there.
Maybe I misheard you, but I thought you said we were over 3 million.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Now, I mean, for 2020. Yeah.
Oh, you're at the top. You're at 3.4 up there. So is it estimated end of year 26 is, oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry.
That's the problem.
I follow you. Yep, gotcha.
Now, obviously, given the feedback of this is not the end. We do have a meeting scheduled for Monday, and I do hope we keep that meeting. What Kristen and I can do is go over the wages and the health insurance to make sure that those numbers are correct. And that may adjust things somewhat. The actuary, well, the MMO is what it is. You've already adopted an MMO. We'll make sure that they're attributed correctly in all the departments. But the expense of the non-uniform MMO, which is approximately $700,000, is not going to go away. That it is what it is. The police MMO actually got lower this year, and that's also already incorporated in this. The other budget that we need to finalize, and the solicitor and I were working on some issues in relation to that today. So I'm hoping by Monday we may have an answer for you, is the fire fund. So that clearly will be on the agenda for Monday, and going over again any incorporating these changes into the general fund, making sure we have the numbers correct in the general fund. But the board should think about assuming that the final numbers don't change too much from what's in here. You'll want to be thinking about what you want to do with the ending up with 2.4 million. So,
And you basically can't eat anything. I mean, at 3.4, just the 30% threshold is 3.3. I mean, there's no fund balance. It's gone.
A mill is worth approximately $885,000. And that has gone down, so that we haven't gone over the revenue. That's the first page of this spreadsheet, but the first line on the first page is the real estate tax for the general fund, and that is based on the current millage. That was the request by the board to use the current millage of 5.345 mils in the general fund at mill is worth $885,500 at a 98% collection rate. There's usually between 98 and 99% collected. And you can
Sorry,
see.
could you repeat that? What's the mill?
$885,500.
Thanks.
And you can see my notes about properties going into exempts and reductions. The Act 511 taxes here, meaning the earned income tax, local services tax, occupational assessment tax, per capita tax, those are estimates from Berk's EIT agency. They give us estimates, and so I use their estimates to plug in. Transfer tax, it was going on both historical and we've already received transfer tax for both October and November, so I already know what most of that is already. And then the rest of the revenue, the one thing I want to note two things to you. Oh, three, I guess. One, currently the fire fund pays a rent to the general fund because the fire offices are in this building. Next year, they won't be in this building. So that little bit of rent goes away. That's about $4,700. Another thing to point out is, believe it or not, unexpectedly, we've still been getting money from the landfill. They were scheduled to close in 2025, but landfills take in tonnage based on two things: weight and density. If they can compact their trash more, they can take in more trash. So they've switched from what we all generate municipal trash, when you put your trash bags out or whatever, to more construction trash, which apparently is very crushable. So we've been enjoying more revenue from the landfill, and we're still expected to get at least one more payment from them in January. We might even be able to get an April payment. That's why I still have some revenue in there. They do expect to apply for an expansion permit, but it takes several years to get that. The ARPA funds refers to the COVID-19 rescue money that all municipalities were given. That's what the ARPA refers to. And obviously that money is not coming back. And then the police details, that's the money that the chief was referring to. We get reimbursed. The assessments, the reassessments that have been happening have really been hurtful to us and other municipalities. I know that there was an article today about the city of Reading tax increase. It's happening pretty much everywhere.
We have some serious stuff to talk about here. I mean, just when you look at the averages, we can't dip into the fund balance anymore, not without falling below the 30%. So we've got about a $1.2 million deficit we got to make up. So if you want to translate that into people, because that's effectively what you're talking about probably 4 police officers and 4 public works / admin people. We have to think about it. Do we really want to go there? Do we want to do that?
Which I think what I'm hearing is there's 2 directions you can go.
We've got 2 directions. We don't have 3 directions anymore because the fund balance has been eaten over the past 5 or 6 years. So that's gone. So either we're increasing taxes or if you want to keep it even, you could slide that scale in different directions. You could go with more public works people, you could go with more police officers. But if you wanted to keep it even, you would be looking at like 4 of each of them, like 8 total people, if you wanted to balance this out. You could also do a combination of tax increases and staff reductions.
But those are the 2 levers we have to.
Those are the levers we
balance
got
the
at this
budget.
point.
Yeah.
So we have to think about it if we want to go there or not.
I do not want to lose staff.
I'm not suggesting that we go that route either. I mean, it's we're heading into a massive growth initiative right now. Over the next couple of years, I think a lot will change here. I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to eliminate people only to put them back on in a short time frame after that. But by saying that, then that means we're looking at a pretty massive tax increase.
We had 0 growth because we had people that limited what growth comes into the township. So the only thing left is raise taxes.
Yeah, that's just nonsense. I mean, you're talking about
Excuse me, Greg, before we go into the tax raising, how have we cleaned out our fund balance of 3 million?
our threat.
No, Greg, I'm asking Gene, not you.
For the record, Mr. Bettler.
No, you keep
No.
quiet. I'm not asking.
Be
Keep
quiet.
quiet.
Be-
You have no position.
I am actually.
You have nothing other than the same power that I have.
Yes, I realize that.
Exactly.
And I'm just-
Exactly, then stay put.
I am staying put
Okay,
in my
Gene, will you
seat and I'm
please answer
speaking,
the question.
and I just have one quick
Just, no,
question.
I don't want to answer any of your questions.
Quick,
No,
Mick.
no, no, no. Now keep quiet, young man. I'm asking.
You're not
Gene.
gonna keep quiet.
Then I'm not, and we're gonna just have a shouting match, buddy.
I'm not shouting.
Good.
I'm gonna
Sounds
make
like
my
it to
point.
me.
The point I wanted to make was,
No, I'm not
That-
interested in your point.
Mr.
I'm
Bettler
not interested in your
interrupted
point.
Mr.
I'm not
Miller.
interested
in
in
the
your
first
point.
place to
No,
even speak
I'm
it.
not interested in your
I
point.
just want to
And
point
the-
that out.
And the
That
point is,
Mr. Greg Miller
voted
was
for me, I'm not
interrupted.
interested in it either.
And
Okay, you two,
thank you, Alicia. I just wanted to make that
just
point.
one at a time. both of you
No,
speak
no,
just
go ahead,
one at a
Mr.
time?
Backdorf. All I wanted to say was that you started talking by interrupting Greg. So please go ahead. Your extremely important point that you interrupted Greg to make.
Then all I wanted to ask from Gene was the fact that we have a fund balance of 3 million or don't we?
I'm projecting at the end of 2025, with these adjustments that have been made, we have a balance over 3 million, about 3.2. It's what Mr. Greg Miller is referring to is the fact that 2026, under this scenario, our expenses exceed our revenues by about 1.1 million.
No. Would you care to continue since you were
Yeah, so we
interrupted, Greg?
can't do that. And the stuff about growth, I'm assuming you're talking about the Flying Hills warehouse. That's $250,000. Like what? What one across from Green Hills? We didn't deny access for that.
Right, isn't that right?
It's called Old Hickory, Dave.
Yeah, Old Hickory, yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't mount any kind of challenge for that. So the only thing you could be referring to is Flying Hills Warehouse, which is
We had the Old Hickory as well.
$250,000.
We got.
We know this is nonsense. Let's just
It's
move on.
nonsense. So let's not go there. So we have to figure out how we're gonna handle this.
I mean, we have two levers. And yes, we're going to need good luck thanks to poor leadership in previous boards.
That's a really nicest thing to say since you're only halfway through your term.
Yeah, you're right. And looking at what we have been left with to clean up, it's not a nice picture.
That wouldn't be excuse.
Well,
No, it's not.
The reality is, look at the numbers in front of you, Dave. You haven't looked at a single budget page while we've been sitting here. Why would you actually look at the numbers?
Taxes at all.
Yeah, why is that, Dave? Because we've been eating our fund balance. the whole
We never had. We never touched our fund balance and we never had to raise tax.
now we're just making things up. So this is silly. So it's not true. It's not even close to true.
We don't listen like you can't think. Obviously, I said the first 6 years Bill and I were on the board, we never had to raise taxes.
And where are we now, Dave?
Well, we had growth and we didn't and we didn't discourage growth either.
It's not.
Clearly, we're in a great position because of those 6 years of your stewardship, Mr. Batdorf. Great job.
And we still didn't raise taxes. We still hadn't had to touch our fund balance.
All right. Well, it doesn't sound like we're even going to be able to have a discussion here. So I guess we'll just have to think about it.
What this year reminds me of 2016 and what the board directed at a very similar meeting, minus the shouting, in 2016 is directed the staff to look at the general fund again and propose anything that costs that could be cut or shifted to other funds, which we will obviously do for Monday. However, we're not miracle workers. I respectfully disagree with both of you gentlemen that I think previous boards did adequate stewardship and in some years even exceptional stewardship. Costs have risen and assessments have lowered, and for whatever reason, development has slowed down, and you can attribute that however one wants. We are not the only municipality left dealing with these kind of questions. So the staff will look at how we can trim the budget, the general fund budget, as much as possible. At the same time, it's very obvious that some level of taxes have to be raised. However much the board chooses to do that. We will do our job over the next couple of working days, The board needs to think about what the board would like to do. We've already discussed the ambulance fund, but that could be pulled back another 0.05, or even back 0.1. So you could pull that back a little bit to make more room in the general fund increase. Again, we will re-examine everything, but there is going to be some amount of tax increase in order to make up this difference. One of the things that's unfortunate is that the earned income tax is just holding steady. It's not popping up. We aren't having a lot of new jobs created in the township. And that's unfortunate. So that's my feedback. And in 2016, what happened at the last budget meeting is I presented options to the board. Do you want to do this? Yes or no? Do you want to do that? Yes or no? And we'll take that same approach. And then we also need on Monday to discuss the fire fund, and I hope to have certain answers for you about that on Monday.
If you're curious, the fund balance in 2021 was $5.8 million.
If there's nothing else, I'll go to the reminders. Right, okay, so reminders, Board of Commissioners meetings for November and December. November 24th at 6:30 p.m., special budget meeting. Advertised on 11/20/2025. December 16th at 7 p.m. is a regular meeting. Planning Commission, December 1st at 6 p.m. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.